In this video, I'm just going to show you how to set levels on images on two separate images. So we have this image that's slightly overexposed, and you can see it was a bright sunny day when this image was shot, and the highlight area has definite loss of detail. So the highlights would be, say, are kind of blown here. And that's because the photographer was trying to get a good exposure in the face. So this one's a little over. And then we have this image here, which is just a little bit dark. So the exposure is just a little under. So we're going to set levels on each of these images. One that's a little over and one that's just a little under. So to set levels, we go over here in our adjustments panel. And if you can't find your adjustments panel, you can always make sure it's open by clicking on Window and navigating to Adjustments here. Also, it's of note that I am working in the photography workspace. So if you're in one of these other workspaces, your Photoshop interface will not look the same as mine. Of course, if you've changed things, added panels, or removed them, you can always reset to the default photography workspace by clicking Reset Photography here. Okay, so I'm going to start by adding an adjustment layer here to this image, and it's going to be the levels adjustment layer. And if you just go over here under adjustments, you see you have this radio button, and when I hover over it, it comes up levels and it says create a new levels adjustment layer. So I click it, and indeed my levels adjustment comes up here. When the levels adjustment opens, what you can see is a graph. This graph is a histogram, and that histogram is a graphical representation of your exposure value. On one side, we have 0. In digital photography, 0 means there was 0 information recorded. And basically that means a full black. So because this is a overexposed image, there's not a lot of blacks, pure blacks here. Conversely, at the other end of our histogram, you see a number here that's associated with this slider, and that number is 255. In digital photography, 255 means too much or all the information was recorded, and that shows up as pure white. And you can see how we have those pure white in the highlights here, and it's completely lacking any information, so it's overexposed. To fix this image, we're just going to bring this slider on the blacks, or the black slider next to the 0, over to the graph right where the information starts to peak up on that graph. And what you'll notice is we now have a pure black set in there where there wasn't one before. You could also use the slider in the middle to adjust your midtones. And when I slide to the left, the midtones get brighter, and when I slide to the right, the midtones get darker. Unfortunately, what this tool won't help us do is recover those overexposed highlights. When you're shooting in JPEG mode and you overexpose a highlight area of your image, that detail is gone forever. But if we turn our eyeball on the adjustment panel on and off, we can see that we have much more contrast in the midtones just from setting that black slider. If we go to an image that's slightly underexposed, we can do the same process. We can add an level adjustment layer by clicking the radio button in the adjustments panel. And what we see here is on the highlight area of the image, we're missing some information, and that essentially tells you that there's no pure whites captured here. So if we slide that image back, we brighten it just a little bit. And I'm going to slide it back right to where that graph starts to really jump up. Again, we can just tweak our black point, and we can change our midtones by using the midtone slider. And then we can toggle the effect on and off with the eyeball toggle layer visibility button here or over here in this adjustment panel. And we can see the image has been just brightened a little bit here. Once you've made your changes, once you've added an adjustment layer, you're now creating what's called a Photoshop document. So if you go to save your image, what you'll notice is under format, it now wants to save the image as a Photoshop document and a PSD. The Photoshop document or .psd extension is a great format if you want to archive your changes. If I save this, these layers will show up. However, you can't post a Photoshop document online. You're going to have to flatten those layers. To flatten the layers, we simply convert back to JPEG. So if we save this image now with a new name, we can flatten it as a JPEG.